Hey everybody, this is Matt from Cincy Jungle. Today we are continuing our position by position preview of the Bengals for the 2020 season, and today we are talking about special teams. Now, we're taking a little bit of a bigger bite today because we're not focused on one position. We are going to talk about the specialist, kicker, punter, and long snapper. We're going to talk about returners, but we're also going to talk about some guys that play some other roles on special teams, fielding and blocking on returns. But we will start with the specialist, and we'll start with Kevin Huber. Kevin Huber, one of the best punters in the league. He's a Cincinnati native, a UC alum, excellent player for the Bengals, 45.3 yard average. So that's definitely a position you can feel very good about. Clark Harris, all right, has been a long snapper for a few years, been a very solid player for the Bengals, really cool hair. Right? Kind of looks a little bit like Thor.
I need a horse!
And he's a solid long snapper. All right? Solid long snapper. Pro Bowl back in 2017 for whatever that's worth. And that gets us to kicker. We've got Randy Bullock. All right? He missed one PAT last year. Was perfect on field goals under 30 yards. 10 of 12 from 40 to 49. But then the problem is, past 49, he was 1 of 3. So pretty solid, pretty dependable guy until you need that big, long field goal. They did re-sign, bring back Tristan Vizcaino. Could be a camp leg. Obviously, sometimes these guys are going to need to rest. The returners still need work. But, they brought him back for a reason. Maybe they saw something in him. Maybe they think with a little bit of development in the offseason, he could make a push. Look, kicker, punter, these positions are different than other positions. If an offensive guard has trouble with his anchor, it's hard to work on that by yourself in the offseason. If a receiver needs work, he needs to work against DBs. He needs to work with a quarterback. Kicker can go out and kick, all right? And, if you're willing to put in the time and effort and do it, you can get a lot better working on your own with a coach, but on your own over the offseason. So we'll see. That brings us now to kick returner. Brandon Wilson we'll start with. He had the touchdown last year to open up the game against Baltimore. Averaged 31 yards per return last season. Obviously, that is a little bit skewed by that 92-yarder against the Ravens. But look, he's a really good special teams player, really good returner. We'll see a little bit of him on defense as well. So expect him to play a large role this year because, his athletic profile and his ability to tackle, it's more than just returning kicks with him. He can do a lot of things on special teams. He's the type of player you need. You need a handful of those guys who can do a lot of things, who have that kind of athletic ability, but aren't necessarily going to be your starters on offense or defense. Darius Phillips, all right? In college, he had 5 kickoff return touchdowns, 1 punt return touchdown. And in the NFL last season, he averaged 21.9 yards per return. Again, that sounds like a huge difference between him and Wilson, but he didn't have that 92-yard touchdown. So take that out, and it's going to be a lot closer. He also had 3 punt returns for 8 yards last season. Punt return is an interesting aspect because I think people lump them together and they say, okay, this guy can return kicks and punts. But punt is a lot harder, all right? And it's really a lot more about trust. Alex Erickson has been the punt returner primarily. Alex Erickson has been the punt returner. That's his best chance of holding a roster spot with all the talent that they have at receiver now. Really, it's more pressure. All right, it's more pressure. The defense is on you a lot faster. All right, it's a different trajectory of the ball, and now you catch that. All right, if you muff that ball, the defenders are right there. So I don't know the exact numbers, but hey, there's a 50 chance you're not getting that ball back. It's a turnover. All right, and it ends up being basically a 40-50 yard offensive play on that muff punt, and you're giving up the ball. Whereas with kickoff return, if you muff a kickoff return, you might screw up the return, but you're going to maintain possession the majority of the time. One example of this, Phillips, despite his ridiculous success in college, He had 2 kickoff return touchdowns in his first 2 seasons of college. Didn't touch a punt. Why? Because they had somebody else that they felt better about, right? Because on punt returns, special teams coordinators tend to focus on the guy who is reliable, who they know they can trust to handle the punt, more than the guy that they think has home run ability. So that's what you got to look at here. Do they trust Phillips to catch that punt every time? If they do, maybe he is able to take that over, which obviously he has the home run ability, so that's pretty exciting. All right, now the Bengals lost a major special teamer in Clayton Fedulum. He played 379 snaps on special teams last year. That is massive. 379 snaps, and including personal protector, probably his most notable position. So let's see who fits into that role. Cethan Carter played a big role on special teams as well, particularly on coverage and return teams. CJ Uzama, Drew Sample, those guys will play a role. You see a lot of tight ends in there. You see those types of bodies. For the same reason, I think Kareem, he gets healthy, he's going to get an opportunity to contribute on special teams also because of some of the kind of physical gifts he has in that area fit in. Jordan Evans was a big contributor on special teams. His roster spot could be on the bubble with all the changes the Bengals have made at linebacker, all the additions they've had there. So, are we going to see more Jermaine Pratt on special teams this year? Logan Wilson, all right, the rookie. Are we going to see more Akeem Davis-Gaither, the rookie? We're going to see Marcus Bailey, the rookie. Some of these guys are going to need to be able to contribute in there. If they're not getting themselves up into that top roster spot, getting themselves some serious reps on defense, then it's going to come down to special teams for a lot of those guys. We'll see how that balances out, but it's great having all those guys around because we're going to find some good defensive players in there, but we're also going to find some good special teamers. Flipping over the offensive side of the ball, receiver. If you're not one of those top 5 guys at receiver, you better be able to contribute on special teams. All right, for years, we had Cody Core making this team, and people didn't really understand it. He was contributing very well on special teams. Auden Tate even, right? He did have some contributions on special teams, but that's going to be important even for him having a pretty solid roster spot in terms of what he's doing offensively. It's going to be important for him to be able to play a role there also. Alex Erickson, like we said, might be an on-the-bubble guy. He's going to have to fight it on special teams, prove his worth there. And one guy, Stanley Morgan, did some really nice things on special teams last year. He's a guy, he's not going to be one of those top guys on the offense right now. All right, it'd be a pretty big surprise if he was. But he did some really good things on special teams, and that might get him a spot on the active roster. Now, defensive backs always play a major role on special teams. Even the starters at times will play a large role. So, yeah, we're going to see a lot of Brandon Wilson and Darius Phillips, and not just returning kicks. We're going to see Sean Williams, who we saw a lot of last year, Von Bell, who played very well on special teams for the New Orleans Saints. We're going to see some of those guys. All right, with all these new defensive backs, Greg Mabin is going to have to continue to contribute on special teams to show his worth, to maintain a roster spot. He's going to be challenged from new guys like Tony Brown, like Winston Rose. Those guys are going to need to find roles on special teams as well. Trayvon Henderson, somebody that fans like quite a bit, but he's buried a little bit on that safety depth chart. He is going to have to be able to show that he can be a major contributor on special teams. Running back. All right, if your name is not Joe Mixon or Giovanni Bernard, and you want to be active on Sundays at running back, you better be contributing on special teams. Travion Williams actually had 124 snaps on special teams last year. We didn't see much of him on offense, but we did see some of him on special teams. So that's going to be important. And as we're looking at these last through, as you're doing your roster predictions, those spots are important. You're not having an impact on offense or defense right away. You've got to be helping on special teams. There's only so many players on the roster, all right? You need to be getting something out of these guys on Sundays. Although the specialists will likely be the same, it's still a pretty interesting position. How do they replace a guy like Fedulum, who did a lot of things on special teams for them last year, played a pivotal role as the personal protector? And special teams is going to help to determine really those last few roster spots, like we said. So those deeper spots at linebacker, at defensive back, at wide receiver, even at running back. Who is going to be sticking around? who is going to make the active roster, because sometimes, you might have a guy he's a pretty good player, but he's not active on Sundays because he's not going to play. And the guy who's not quite as good of a receiver, not quite as good of a running back as him, he has a role on special teams. So he's dressing on Sundays. So how are those things going to be determined? Definitely going to be interesting to see how that works out. So stay tuned. Camp is going. All right. Things are changing every day. It's an exciting time for some football, and we will keep going with these previews. Hoo day. Go Bengals.
Red 7, hot route.